Okay, now that we finally have both measures of monthly job estimates, and the second one came out on Friday, which actually produces the unemployment rate, which is what I'm showing here. Uh, I figured we could go over some of that information for really just kind of like a couple of markets. I'll focus on DFW and really just kind of Naples, and we'll kind of go over that information, and I'll give you kind of my 2 cents on what I'm seeing. So, without further ado, I will start really with this visual, which may appear to be busy, but look, it's all set up this way intentionally just because I find really like the most efficient way to really make sense of what, say, is happening in a place like DFW. Because not only am I looking at like both, you know, real measures or surveys that really capture what's happening in DFW, but I'm showing something like the stock of jobs and how it's changed over time by industry. So that's just going to give you more insight into where we sort of go from here. So uh, let me just kind of explain the main differences between something like the establishment survey and really like the household survey or like the local versions of those things. So NFP, think non farm payrolls, that comes from the establishment survey. That's the one that gets all the attention at a national level when it gets quoted monthly. And they quote that information like month over month, seasonally adjusted. Everything we're looking at here is not seasonally adjusted. I think there's too much emphasis on all these seasonally adjusted numbers. But on top of that, the establishment survey uh, doesn't make a distinction for multiple job holders, part-time, full-time folks, and it doesn't capture like the unincorporated self-employed individuals. The establishment survey also, as the name implies, it's an employer-facing survey, and so it captures where jobs are based on where the employer is located. But most people work, just generally speaking, where they live. They may not work like say in the county in which they live, but they just generally live in the vicinity of the area. So, and the other thing too is I'm showing like NFP by its detail, so like by industry, and the legend for all three of these is up here. Okay, obviously they're colored the same. That represents the primary economic activity of these establishments themselves. So I hope that sort of clears that up. Now, for the household survey, as the name implies, it's a household facing survey, and so it actually captures where somebody lives. When you look at this information, say like at a national level, it's like one person, one job, but they have various cuts of that data. So they do like cover like multiple job holders and part-time full-time workers, and they do capture the unincorporated self-employed as well. So when you look at that information, like the national cut of that data, I mean, it's combined with obviously the establishment survey. You get way out into say some of these NAICS codes, you're just going to realize that it's just kind of textbook recessionary. And we're seeing a lot of those national trends just play out at varying rates of change really across these markets. So, the other thing that's nice about the household survey is when you look at that information, like really at scale again, it has more of a demographic flavor to it. So it's just kind of adding more insight into sort of where we go from here. But okay, I'll shut up now. By the way, CES, think establishment survey. LAUS, think household survey. That's local area unemployment statistics. So, okay, the setup itself. I'll start with this top left hand chart. This is a stacked bar chart. It's really just showing the NFP detail by industry. So, the takeaway here is there's like over 4 million jobs in DFW. This goes all the way back to 1996 through January 2025. So, very long term perspective. Now, this is the same thing, but just year over year. Again, it's a stack bar chart. And so we're looking at really the change in bodies, okay? Change in head count. And it's really hard to see these trends in something like Fred because of these giant fat tails that a chart like this would produce. I mean, you could sort of see what's going on, but it's still kind of difficult. So I like throwing this information in Power BI and zooming in on it because you can really see where there's weakness. And by the way, just even the distribution of job growth itself can tell you, say, where you can expect the unemployment rate to go from here. So, for example, if you start to see something like healthcare and government jobs accounting for the bulk of, say, monthly job growth, that's in and of itself sort of a textbook recessionary signal. So, as we saw, there was a truckload of really trade, transportation, and utilities, as well as professional business services jobs that were added post COVID. Okay. And they appear to be slowing down significantly. So that's going to be a problem. Now, okay, long term down here as well. But what I've done here is I'm showing just really like the rate of change of these various industries, but very near term. So this chart only goes back to like 2022. So we're seeing long-term trends, but also near-term trends in great detail. And what you're basically seeing is that everything is slowing. It's really just how, like, the degree to which it's unwinding at in varying rates. That's the difference. So if I'm focused on really these two giant buckets here, I mean, professional business services, trade, transportation, utilities, they're basically in a recession. Okay, and I know people like to hold on to hope that, oh, that trend is reversing. No, that's just a giant dead cat bounce related to BTFP. So look where we are. Okay, see what I've done there? You're in a recession. Okay, so what happens every single time that you have a recession? Job growth slows, unemployment rate goes up. Job growth slows, the unemployment rate goes up. Job growth slows, the unemployment rate goes up. It's not rocket science. Okay, I'm going to jump over here to Naples and I'll save you the explanation that I just went through in terms of the methodology and really the visual itself. Okay, my takeaway in looking at this is obviously it's just a smaller area, right? Uh, there's roughly 175,000 jobs here. Okay, and if I zoom this thing in, what I am seeing is, especially near term, some very significant weakness, especially in something like leisure and hospitality. And I know that this market is just more cyclical. A lot of tourism here. Population is just older. Especially in Southwest Florida, there's like a lot of second homes. There's a high number of homes per capita as well in this market. And it's just, I mean, a lot of tourism too. So very cyclical area. I'm not really surprised to see that something like inventory or active listings for sales moved higher. And so, look, the unemployment rate is just going to move higher from here. Rates are still quite high. So it is kind of what it is. But okay, now, as promised, the other day I alluded to the fact that you can, because we were basically looking at like a lot of metros and stuff, you can actually look at stuff like the unemployment rate for cities, micropolitan areas, metropolitan divisions, even. And oftentimes that information is just not in something like Fred. Some of it is, not all of it. So, look, what do you observe? All this stuff sort of moves in lockstep together. And I know this looks kind of busy because, again, these are not seasonally adjusted numbers. And so there's some chop to it. But just notice, I mean, it all really sort of is pretty snug in this post GFC environment, which indicates to me that this thing is just that much more fragile. So we're looking at the information all the way back to 1990. It's through January of 2025. And this is just that same information, but again, zoomed in very near term. So what happens? Okay. The unemployment rate is in a broad-based uptrend really everywhere, right? So there's that. Now, what if I just apply like a 12-month moving average to that same information, those unemployment rates? It comes into focus. So Fort Worth looks like it's, we'll call it the weakest of these 8 cities, but it all, broadly speaking, trends together, and that really shouldn't be a surprise. Now, I'll just show some nearby cities for Naples, and I've just got this configured slightly differently. So I'm showing U3, which is again the unemployment rate, plus its 36-month moving average for both Fort Myers and Cape Coral. And again, this is over a long time period. And what you're basically going to observe is that once the unemployment rate gets sustainably above its 36-month moving average, you're basically at the doorstep or you're in a recession. So, yeah, there's that. Just food for thought. And I just kind of blows me away that people are still calling this like a strong jobs market when it's anything but that. The only thing that should really matter at this point is just hard numbers. So, yeah, that's all I got, guys. Have a good one.